Everybody, and welcome back to the 1904 Club. You may have heard me say I need to go shopping after this. What an exciting life I lead. This morning, I'm joined by Kathryn and Burnsy. And Burnsy, thanks to last week's pod, you've now moved into the 21st century.
Well, let's hope so. My plea to because we were getting messages, weren't we? And you were telling me that my internet was bobbins. Thanks to my plea to Qualcomm, they got in touch and have been round and put a booster in and all sorts. And thanks to Mark and Nick at Qualcomm who sorted me out. And I think it's Mark listens to the podcast. So he was aware that there was a few problems. So they've come and hopefully, fingers crossed, sorted me out. And I've invested in some Chinese technology for a microphone as well. Just thought, well, I may as well move into the 21st century.
If anybody from MSC Cruises or Sandals Resorts are listening, we'd love to go to the Caribbean. So please
from a beach
in Barbados, please get in touch. We're interested in contra deals and anything we can help you with. So please get in touch. Disney World, anybody like that. Kathryn, how are we?
Have you got a discount code now, Burnsy? Is it like Burnsy 10 for 10% off? The joke went over your head, or the Wi-Fi's not working.
If only it's broke already. He needs to get back onto Qualcomm and look. Kathryn's joke didn't land. It took me 10 seconds. Can we get it fixed again?
Don't tell me that it's not gone already. It's not lagging already, is it?
You're back now. I think it's all right. It was just my joke clearly killed it. It clearly didn't like it.
No, I thought it was very good. I liked it.
You didn't laugh though, so we're a bit concerned.
What a review!
Fantastic, right? That's a bit about as flat as Hull City's performance last night, which wasn't great. It was a poor game, but they did draw 0-0 with a Watford team that were much better, and that was the assessment of Sergej Yakurovic. City never really got going, lacked energy, lacked momentum, couldn't keep the ball, kept giving it away. Very similar to the performance at Blackburn, but they've had arguably two of their poorest performances for quite some time, and they've got 4 points and they've kept back-to-back clean sheets for the first time this season. So in a strange kind of way, it's not all that bad. They're third in the table, 4 points off. I'm getting my threes and my fours muddled up. 4 points off the top, and crucially, more importantly for me, is 9 points clear of that team in seventh. So, Kathryn, that is as frustrating as last night was, and they didn't play well. They got away with a point, and if you're not playing well, and you're collecting 4 points from 2 games in 3 days, that's quite some position to be in, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, and I think the Watford game last night it did feel like one of those where we could have easily lost that sort of thing. Watford had the better chances. Went close a couple of times, and I think maybe in seasons gone by we probably would have conceded right at the end, or maybe even earlier this season we would have conceded later on in the game. And I think the fact that we did hold on to the clean sheet, and as you say, just came and made sure we got a point out of it, to put on the board. I think you can't really complain when you take 4 points from 2 games when you haven't played your best football. You could say it felt like a little bit of an opportunity with Watford sort of on a bad run. Obviously their managerial situation. I did always think there would be a reaction. I thought they'd be determined given what happened, the time the game was meant to be played in January. I thought they'd come here and kind of want to get a result for their fans. But they're a decent team. I thought they defended well. And we might look back on that end of the season and think, that was a decent point that is either got us into the playoffs or potentially, the top 2 is still there. 4 points. It's not a massive gap. So, a point on the board is always a good thing.
And Burnsy, I think that's the point to make, isn't it? That, City are in a position that is incredible with 16 games to go, a position that nobody could have ever foreseen. And yes, there is that element of, it was the game in hand last night. It was the opportunity to put real distance between themselves, or even more distance between themselves and seventh, and close that gap to the top 2 to just 2 points. And the fact we're having these conversations it still blows my mind. And I kind of have to pinch myself that we're talking in these areas, but we are, and that's they're on merit. So, how would you assess that performance last night? And I guess coming on the back of a game, I keep wanting to say Blackpool. Maybe I wish I was going to Blackpool instead of Blackburn, but a poor performance at Blackburn, but one where they found a way to win the game.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit. I genuinely thought it was a big opportunity last night and an opportunity missed. I thought it was a chance to sort of set the tone, as it were, put down a marker. 4 consecutive home games. Don't create any element of doubt about your home performances or anything like that. This is the first of those 4 home games against a club that's in a bit of disarray, and I fully accept that they have good players. But I did think, I think I said before the match, I felt the sum of their parts was not greater than the individuals within their squad, but they played well last night, Watford. So I thought it was a real chance to build a bit of momentum. And in the end, it may well turn out to be a vital point, but they didn't take the opportunity for me. They, in the last 2 games, they've struggled to get the passing going. The midfield has not really been cohesive, has it? They've not found any rhythm or any control of the game, and I do feel it's an opportunity missed. But I accept, as the manager was saying after the game, that it's a decent point in the grand scheme of things. But I just you don't want to create any uncertainty about your home form by struggling a little bit. And you think back to Swansea, Swansea had opportunities in that home game. So, there's a little bit of regret from me, and I'm sure there is from the players and the coaching staff, because it was an excellent chance to make progress, wasn't it?
And I think, Kathryn, that whilst obviously their home form has been markedly improved on recent seasons, they've won eight games at home, but they haven't been particularly convincing in the last. If you think of the Stoke game they lost, they were awful against Blackburn in the FA Cup. Yes, I know there were changes, but that was, Blackburn made more changes. They were really poor and needed penalties. They, as Burnsy says, the Swansea game, yes, they won the game. They played well for a period in the first half, but then were second best for much of the second half and ended up hanging on for it. And obviously then last night. So, the last few home games since the turn of the year, they've laboured, I would say, and with 3 more to come in the league, obviously they've got Chelsea, but let's park that for the minute. You've got a Bristol City side on Saturday that aren't in great form, have just been thumped 5-0 at home on their own patch, have lost a couple of their best players. You've then got a QPR side that you don't really know what you're going to get from game to game, and then Derby, who were incredible, in fairness to them, at Bristol City, and have got, along with City and Middlesbrough, the best away record in the league, and like City, look set up to play better away from home. So those 3 home games are inherently winnable, but they're just not convincing, are they, at the minute at home? They're not dominant. They're not controlling games. They're loose with possession, and because they're loose with possession, they're having to do an awful lot of chasing around to try and win the ball back, because they're giving the ball away like that, and they're having to run, more than they need to get it back.
Yeah, I think they're all quite tricky games coming up at home. I think Bristol, you feel like there'll be a reaction from them after that 5-0 thrashing last week. A good team. I know away from home they're not as good as they are at home. Granted, that thrashing did come at home. And then, you mentioned, Derby, QPR, they're all quite tricky, but I think that is kind of probably the nature of the Championship as well, that, sometimes form goes out the window a little bit. I think we are missing Matt Crooks a little bit. I'm not sure he would have made enough of the difference to necessarily win the game last night, but I think we're missing his presence in that sort of position in the midfield. Just his physicality. He wins a lot. Wins the ball back a lot. I know we joke about him giving fouls away and getting booked, but he does kind of break up play quite well for a player that's more sort of forward thinking than a sitter. I kind of thought Kieran Dowell, you could see last night, he's not quite up to speed yet, and it might take him a little, a couple of games to really kind of get into the groove of things. But I do think Crooks is a big miss, and it's about trying to find ways of playing without him and sorting that midfield out. But I do think it is the sort of centre of the pitch where we haven't quite been as good. And you look at why that is, and maybe it is because Crooks isn't there, and it's not easy to replace him. I think Ryan Giles coming back is a positive, although I do think Matty Jacob played really, really well last night. But you think about that creativity angle of it. While Jacob was defensively excellent in terms of getting up the pitch, I think we have missed Ryan Giles's creativity, and I'm sure Ollie McBurney's probably missed his crosses as well. So it's good that he's coming back, but I do think Crooks is a big miss at the minute.
Burnsy, that's an important point that Kathryn raises with Gilo coming back, because, and I said this last night myself about McBurney, they're not creating anything for McBurney really, are they? And that is a problem. Even at Preston, you put a nice ball in, but McBurney made the finish, didn't he? They're not creating a huge amount for him to get hold of. He's having to do an awful lot of his work back to goal, outside the box, on halfway to try and hold it up. They're not getting the wingers forward. They're not getting the midfield pushing on and creating. And that's the thing with Giles is that ability. And he tried to wind up a couple last night, didn't he? But obviously he's been out for a month, and but he didn't be the first man, and it's going to take him a little while to get back into that rhythm of it. But him coming back, and Jacob was very good last night. Got cut open a couple of times with you in the first half, but they're lacking that creativity in giving McBurney service, aren't they?
He's feeding on scraps at the moment, and I feel for him. And he's having to go hunting for the ball, and really the ball should be finding him coming in from wide. I wonder whether they're playing through the wingers enough at the moment, but that comes from a lack of midfield control. And going back to Kathryn's point about Crooks, he just links play so well from back to front, doesn't he? As well as all the other things he does, he links play, and he's capable of holding on to the ball. I thought last night Amir and Dowell just struggled to get into the game, and if that's two of your midfielders, then you're undermanned there. No wonder you don't get control in the game. Messages coming in to the 1904 club. Jason Statham, no, not that one, says very solid transfer window. It was, Jason. Brought in fresh energy, which was needed. We weren't at the races against Watford, but Watford were good value for the point. In fact, if Loser had taken that chance, they'd have got all three. Jason says, my big disappointment is the standard of refs in this league. Week in, week out, we see awful decisions for both sides. Sort it out, EFL. Yeah, maybe a discussion for another day. The standard of refereeing with VAR in the Premier League is not necessarily any better. I'm not sure you get better decisions. Oliver Harsley says, think the pressure of potentially getting closer to the top two got to the players, as they just couldn't get anything going and looked nervy throughout. We'll give credit to Watford as well, though, for how they properly stifled us with their tactical approach. Are either of you, Kathryn, you detecting any nerves? We've not really talked about pressure. I feel they've been sort of playing without pressure. The pressure will come at some point, but where are you on that?
I don't think it was a pressure thing last night. I think we just struggled to get the rhythm of the play going, and I think various different reasons for that. It seems sort of like too easy to say the conditions don't help, because they are the same for both teams. But I do think sort of the rain hammering down. I know that pitch at Preston was terrible, and we ended up scoring 3 goals in it, and it worked really well. So you kind of can't sort of blame pitches and stuff like that. But I do think the players have mentioned, the pitch at home sometimes being a bit of a struggle to play the football they want to play on it. When they're at home, maybe it's slightly different when they're playing away from home. But I don't think it's nerves, because I think if there was nerves and pressure, I think we probably would have conceded in quite a lot of the games where we've actually had to see them out in recent weeks. You think of Southampton, you think of the Blackburn, Swansea, even last night when we were sort of, we took a point. I think that will ramp up the further we get into the season, and the closer we get to, talking about playoffs and potential promotion when the run-in starts. I think we're quite far away from that at the minute.
I agree with you, Kathryn. I don't think it's a pressure thing. I just don't think they played well last night. And I think you have to give Watford credit. Watford are a funny team because they've got, as you said, Burnsy at the top. They've got some very, very good individual players. And I think Louser is better than anything City have got in midfield. The way he pulls the strings, the way he controls the game, he dictates it from back to front. I think he's a player that they could. He's the sort of player they could really do with. Chakavadze in midfield was very good as well. And I just don't think they played well. But what I would say is, you can't play well every week. They can't win every game. They've won 4 in a row. They're flying. And I think you have to sometimes accept that there are 2 teams in a game and that the other team aren't just going to turn up, roll over and let you tickle their bellies. And I think Watford, I was worried before the game. Jurkovic sort of said yesterday, on Monday when I spoke to him, that the fact they've changed manager, you don't really know what that can do. Yes, he's an under-21s coach, but they're not, these people aren't daft. They change things. You very often get a reaction when a manager goes, had Javi Gracia have been in charge, the ironic thing, he was so desperate to play the game in early January, he didn't fancy it yesterday. I think they would have won the game yesterday had he have been manager because they were in poor form, not playing well. And so it just changes the dynamic. And, as I say, I think they're a really, really good team. They've got very good individuals. Kayembe's another one. Obviously, Barr come off the bench. They should have scored. So I just think sometimes in the Championship, particularly midweek games, when you're not at your best, you just have to take what comes and say, we haven't played well. We've got a point. We've got a clean sheet. We're a point closer to the top. We're a point further away from 7th. We're in an incredible position, and we've got a Bristol City team at home on Saturday that have just been absolutely walloped 5-0 on their own patch and have had the best player sold a couple of days before the deadline, and the manager's not overly happy. So, like Kathryn says again, the next 3 games are really sticky games. But if you want to be a team that gets promotion, you've got to go and get a good return from them 3 games, a really good return. And their home form so far this year has not been great. They've got a couple of results, but it's not been convincing. They're not controlling games. The manager said to me last night that they've got a problem in midfield he needs to fix. And we've talked about that all season, that lack of control. And that we saw it was evident at Blackburn that they just don't keep the ball. Every time they get the ball, they're giving it away. Every time they get the ball at the back, it's going long or it's going into midfield and they're losing it. They've got players that aren't fit. Gelhardt doesn't look fit. There was the wonderful tackle by Regan Slater on the edge of his own box. He drove forward through midfield in the second half, laid it out to Gelhardt, who cut in. And I think Gelhardt, pre-injury against Borough, cuts in and has a shot or something positive. Instead, he drives inside, looked for an almost impossible ball to McBurney, who's being marked on the penalty spot, and the chance falls away. So decision making, as Kathryn said about Kieran Dowell, poor debut, apart from the flick in the second half where Slater shot, poor debut, too passive. I wanted him to come and do what Louser did. I wanted him to come and take the game by the scruff of the neck. Didn't do it. There were just too many of them last night that were passive. And because there were too many of them that were passive with the ball, there was no energy, no fluidity, no dynamism. It just fed throughout the team. And in the end, the team had a really poor performance, and they got a poor result, but they got a point.
All of that is fair points. Can I just say I thought before the game, because they brought in the young 17-year-old centre half from Man City, Fooney, and I thought, well, you've got to give him kudos because he was excellent. He was nice to watch, and I'm thinking before the game, well, welcome to men's football. Meet Ollie McBurney, young man, and you'll have a torrid evening. But McBurney never really got one-on-one with him, did he? And I thought he was excellent. Paul Jarvis says to us on the 1904 Club, poor game. Watford were the better team. Loser, one of the best players in the Championship. At least Giles got some minutes along with the new lads. Pandor's a good keeper, but needs to sort his distribution out. That was why Liam wouldn't play him. Paul, thank you for that. James Drury says to the 1904 Club, we need more control in midfield. Slater has been consistently good, but I can't help feeling that Amir is more suited to a slower pace and less physical league. Need some big runners in there, says James. And Kathryn, your dad's been in touch. Morning, David, or afternoon, or I don't know, or evening. I don't know when you watch the podcast. David says, I was very impressed with Watford's midfield too, who passed and moved sublimely. Loser always looked a baller. Nobody really stood out for City. There wasn't really a City press last night, and we missed the energy of Kyle Joseph.
I'd agree with that.
Do you agree with your old man, Kathryn?
Yeah, actually, funnily enough, I was going to sort of talk about Joseph at some point, because I know obviously he missed a game after Southampton with that sort of injury, and then he's kind of come back in and out since. But I thought he might have got a start last night after the impact he made off the bench against Blackburn, and I wouldn't be surprised if he starts against Bristol City, obviously with you not being available. But I think he runs and runs and runs, and like he's very good at doing that press that maybe wasn't there last night, and I think he can link up with McBurney quite well. And it's also somebody else that might just occupy defenders a bit more, because while he might play out wide, he can drift in centrally too. And I think we did miss him a little bit. And by the time he came on, it sort of felt like it was really hard for him to sort of make an impact. So I would agree with that. I'm surprised my dad's using the word baller, though. I'm not sure when that came into his vocabulary.
I think the Kyle Joseph point is a really good one, because Kyle sets the tone for the press, and he chases, he harries, and I think his energy has an impact on other players. Other players see.
This from William to the 1904 Floor Club. My internet gone again.
I think so. Clearly,
or is it you lot this time?
I think it must have been you again.
William to the 1904 Club says. For the third time,
you may as well finish it
William
now.
To the 1904 Club says, awful performance, but at the end of the day, it wasn't that bad. 4 points off Altos, 9 points inside the playoffs. Got to remember, Coventry still have to play Middlesbrough. We have to still play Coventry and Derby. Really, it's all in our hands from now until the rest of the season. Ben Stansfield says, such an awful game. Midfield was outrun all game and no creativity at the top of the pitch. We just hoofed it long most of the game. We really need to bounce back on Saturday. Last 3 games, we haven't been at our best. Need to improve performance levels if we want automatics, says Ben Stansfield.
Yeah, I'll just come back on Kyle Joseph, because Burns's KCOM, if you're listening, Burns's internet took offence to Kyle Joseph. He sets the tone for the press, and I think his energy I think it lifts the crowd. I think that's one thing as well. But I think it sets the tone for his team, and other players see Kyle Joseph racing around like a lunatic, and it's infectious. The problem they've got, obviously, is they've signed 2 wingers, and they want to get Kumas, they want to get Yu Hirakawa in the team. You've got Gelhardt coming back, who doesn't look fit, a bit like John Lundstrom and Kieran Dow don't look fit, and it's showing. But you need, I know Carl gets a bit of stick from some fans because of his goal record, and yeah, he's never going to be prolific. But what he does, he's a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 guy. But he creates moments for other people, and I think his energy and work rate is so vital to the way they play and that setup that Jakurovic has. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if on Saturday he came back into the team and started on the flank. Obviously, you can't play under the terms of his loan from Bristol City, so that creates that opportunity for Kyle. And I think, I would have him back in the team, get him in the team, get him chasing, get him harrying. I think Giles will start. I think Toby Collier will probably start, because Jakurovic is worried about the midfield again, as we said before. So I think there'll be the changes. I think, and that's no slight on Matty Jacob, but Giles is a better player, and he gives you far more going forward, and they need that. So I think there's 3 changes to start with. Giles in for Jacob, Collier probably in for Amir, and Kyle Joseph in for Hirakawa. So to start with, Dow, I just felt, as I said before, Kathryn, if you come in on this as well, I think I wanted to see him grab the game by the scruff of the neck. But I would say, in defence of Kieran Dowell, he's played 1 game. He started 1 game since August, and that was with respect to some second-tier, third-tier Scottish team. So in their cup back in early January. So, I mean, that's not really that's nowhere near Championship level. And he's been out of the Championship for a while. He's been playing in Scotland. We know there's clearly a difference between the Scottish Premiership and the Championship. We've seen it before with players coming from, it took Lundstrom time to adjust, having been in Scotland and then Turkey. So it's going to take him time. But I just felt a bit underwhelmed last night with Kieran Dowell. I wanted to see, he'd been given the opportunity, he'd been given the start. He would have been desperate to go out there and lay a marker down with competition around him, but he just didn't do it. But as I say, it was his first Championship start for a long time. He's barely played all season, so there are caveats to that, aren't there?
Yeah, he was a little bit anonymous, wasn't he? And I think that was where the disappointment comes from. But as you say, it's going to take him a little bit of time. I don't think. I wasn't expecting him to come in and suddenly be sort of at the top level straight away. I think it is quite difficult for players when they come in January. Similar a little bit with Gelhardt kind of coming back from his injury. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to sort of giving him a rest on Saturday and maybe starting Miller and Joseph out wide, and then you've got Gelhardt to come off the bench, because I think as well, they'll probably be wary of him playing too much football too quickly after being out for a while. So interesting to kind of see what he does with the attack. But in terms of Dowell, yeah, I think we all know he's clearly an intelligent footballer. He can pick a pass when he has time and space, but just didn't really get him on the ball last night. And whether that's partly it's obviously partly down to him, but potentially we need to look at sort of how we were playing, and did we try and get him into the game enough. A lot of it's down to him in terms of going and taking the game and making sure he's getting on the ball. But at the same time, our passing was quite poor all over the pitch, so it might have been tricky for him to try and find space to pick up the ball and get going forward. So I'm sure he'll improve the more he plays and the fitter he gets. But it's difficult when the game's coming thick and fast, because you do need people to be ready straight away. You kind of can't just sort of keep getting people, have people in the team to get fit for a while. They've got to be ready. So it's a difficult one. Whether he starts again against Bristol will be interesting to see, and whether we manage to get him on the ball a little bit more.
Burnsy?
Yeah, Mind Made of Music gets in touch with us just on team selection for Saturday. He says, first off, 2 tired games, but still 4 points. Seem to be missing a 10. And goes on to say, I'd start Miller and Kumas on the wings on Saturday, as Yu is ineligible. Gelhardt at 10. Lundstrom in for Amir. Hopefully Giles fit to start. Also, says Mind Made of Music, I think McBurney trying too hard and drifting, leaving us with no striker. Well, he's gone hunting for possession, hasn't he? Trying to get involved. That's the sort of player. But I can see what you mean. Sorry, were you going to say something there? Yeah,
he on that comment, on that topic. It reminds me a bit of the Harry Kane situation that we've had with England on occasions, where Harry Kane is such a phenomenal number 9 and so lethal in and around the penalty box. But to try and get himself involved, and we had this in the last major tournament, that he was dropping really deep, wasn't he? He was dropping into his own half to try and get involved and get the ball and get the team up the pitch. In a similar kind of way, McBurney is doing similar, that because they're not getting any service into him, any quality service into him. You want McBurney in between the posts, where he can put the ball in the back of the net and he can get headers and shots away. And the best opportunity he had last night was a looping cross from Louis Coyle, that I think it was from Louis Coyle, where it was quite high. He had to rise up, and all he could do was sort of loop a header up, and it was never threatening the goalkeeper, and he caught it. They're not creating anything for him. They're not giving him anything to go at. So he's having to drop. He's dropping deep to try and get into the game, but he's not got blistering pace. So when he comes to halfway and he wins it and he spins off, he's having to then try and trek forward. But that pace has never been his forte. He's not got anybody going beyond. He's not got a Carl Joseph or a Liam Miller or a Lewis Kumas who's going beyond him to get into the box and allow him to come later. And so I think that is a problem for them. And that is where that number 10, that Matt Crooks role, or whoever it is, they just need somebody like Louser to grab the game by the scruff of the neck, say, I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to win the ball. I'm going to get on the ball, and I'm going to get City going 10, 20 yards further up the pitch. Because last night, they just never did it. And they didn't do it at Blackburn either. And they didn't do it second half against Swansea. So that's why I think he wants to bring Collier in. He wants to bring some fresh energy. Slater's been very good, but as you said, Burnsy, Slater's doing last night. Slater was doing the work of 3 players. That just isn't sustainable, and that might work in little spells in games, in moments, but over 90, 96, 97, 98 minutes, that isn't going to work. Amir was poor, Dow was poor, and Slater was left doing too much work.
Collier's not a 10 though, is he? He's sorry, I don't want to offend Klutz, but he's more a sitting midfielder, isn't he? More a defensive midfielder.
Yeah, but he can play box to box. He can play 6 or an 8, as Prutton would say. But I think it's that extra energy, that ability to get hold of the ball, and that's what they need. They need somebody to come in and be a midfield general, to somebody to come in, get hold of the ball and say, "I'm here. I'm going to control the game. I'm going to dictate play. I'm going to pick the ball up off Egan, off Hughes. I'm going to push forward, play it out wide. I'm going to play play in the pockets." And they don't. There's nobody really taking control at the minute. So I think that's why I think, assuming that Collier gets through training today, tomorrow, Friday, I think he's got a really good chance of starting. And I would also probably not start Gowhart. I would leave him on the bench. Maybe go Joseph and Miller on the flanks, or Joseph and Joseph and Kumas, and then leave because Gowhart played at Blackburn, played last night. He's coming back from injury. Then if you start Giles, Gowhart, Lundstrom, Dow, you've got pretty much half of your outfield team there that have barely played any football in the last month, and in Dow's case, all season. And Lundstrom, you can put Lundstrom in that category because he started the season, got injured against Sheffield United, was out for 2 months, came back at Stoke for 20 minutes, was out for another 2 months, and he's been, he started at Blackburn and was completely ineffective. So he's still, he's barely played all season, Lundstrom. So he's finding his way back to full fitness, and he's in an area where if you're not fully fit, you get overrun, and that's what we saw. Adam Forshaw bossed. I couldn't believe it. Adam Forshaw bossed Ewood Park on Saturday. That was wild. And last night, Chekhovadze and Lauser bossed it. So they've got to find a way of. But we've talked about it all season. It's been a problem for them all season. Is finding a midfield unit that's coherent and dominates games.
How fit is Collier though? Because he's come back from an injury as well.
Yeah, he's been out for 9 weeks, hasn't he? And the manager said that. But I think he said he's got to be careful with him. But from the tone of what he was saying last night was that Collier is probably going to start because nobody else apart from Regan is grabbing the shirt and saying, "Pick me." You can't not pick me, are there?
Yeah, it's good. I mean, I'm excited to see Collier play because I know it didn't work at West Brom, and West Brom were in a weird situation. But the few times I saw him play for Man United, I was always quite impressed with him, and he seemed to make a big impression when he did play. So I'd be interested to see him get an opportunity. But yeah, I suppose it's that thing of how much football can he play after being out for so long.
Well, I mean, if you start, I mean, you get 60 minutes. 60 minutes is the change time, isn't it? If you start him for 60 minutes, you get he's not going to play for 90. Give him a run out and see what happens, and then you can always bring him off. Then you can bring Lundstrom on for the final half an hour. You can bring Amir on for the final half an hour, 20 minutes. You have got options in there. So I would be surprised if, given how poorly they've played in the last 2 games as a collective unit, if Collier didn't come in, assuming that he comes through training okay in the next couple of days.
I'm sure I saw a quote from somebody saying he was the new Casemiro when he first broke through at Manchester United. Do you know who that is, Baz? I meant to write it down and then forgot all about it.
I can't remember. It was brought up last night with Sergey. Simon from PA mentioned it, and he said that he was it Ten Hag or somebody? No, Amorim. No, Amorim said he was either he was the next Casemiro or he had the potential to be better than Casemiro because Jakirovic laughed. Oh. He found it a funny comparison, but yeah, that was, I think it was Amorim said that he's got something along the lines of he's either got the talent or potential to be better than Casemiro.
L. Russ says to the 1904 Club, what's happened to the slick passing style of footy we were playing earlier on in the season? Credit to Watford, they look good, just couldn't finish. John Smith says, too many sloppy passes over the last 2 games. Midfield turning over possession too easily. Bang on, John. Missing Crooks in the midfield. Take the point. Louser, what a player. Danny Hunt says, take the draw when you don't turn up. Can't win them all. Long way to go. And Steve Williamson says, now that we're in a position to be in the playoffs or better, which we never really expected, says Steve, have we solved our defensive issues at letting in too many goals at the expense of free-flowing and exciting attacking play earlier in the season? It's a reasonable question. It's all about balance. Kathryn, what do you reckon?
It's difficult, isn't it? I think away from home, I would say no, but then I think we're suited to playing away from home. You think of that Preston game. I mean, we could have scored more than 3 goals, and we kept a clean sheet, and that's kind of how you want us to play at home sometimes. But it's a bit more tricky when maybe when you're trying to. Watford obviously didn't come for a draw last night, but sometimes it's harder playing at home when you're meant to try and take the game to the opposition, but maybe that's not how you're sort of set up to play, and maybe there's less space in home games. But I think we've just got better at defending. I don't think it's a case of we're sacrificing our, the style of football we want to play going forward to defend better. I think we just have got better at defending, which I think we all hoped would happen and thought would happen eventually as the season went on. That the defence is a lot more settled. Hughes and Egan have a good partnership. Obviously, Ajayi, when he's been there, has been good as well. And Louis Coyle's having a great season. I think the back four have just got more familiar with each other. So I don't think we've changed how we're playing. I mean, we still concede quite a few chances. I think again, Watford probably could have scored last night. But I don't think I wouldn't say we've sacrificed the attacking play to get better at defending.
No, I don't. I completely agree, and I don't think if you watch them play, I don't think they have. I just think the last 2 games, particularly, they've just been really poor in possession. When they've tried to play, the ball's been like the proverbial hot potato. They've had to get rid of it within almost instantly. It's like, I've got to get rid of it. As soon as I get it, I've got to get rid of it. And there's been no pattern to their play. But I don't think they've, I don't think they've changed anything in terms of, well, we're going to be more defensively solid, so we'll sacrifice going forward. They've now kept. That was the first time this season they've gone back to back with clean sheets, and they've kept 9 now, which is as many as anybody. Evor's kept 9 clean sheets, as many as anybody in the league now. So, and I think it's something like 6 in the last 11 games. So that's big, and that got them the result at Blackburn because they didn't play well, but they kept a clean sheet and they got the 1 chance and scored. Now, would it have surprised anybody on Tuesday night had City have carved out a chance in the final couple of minutes and nicked the game 1-0? Because they've done that a lot this season. And that is the basis of teams that get promoted, is when they're not at their best, they find ways. Like what I would say as well, there's a lot of frustration about last night, and I get it because it was a massive opportunity. But they've never lost more than 2 games in a row, and that was way back at the start of the season. So we might sit here and go, but they're on a poor run. They're not playing particularly well. But they're not losing. Was it 1 win in 11, 12 or something? 1 defeat in 11, 12 games. We're sitting here talking like they've lost the last 2 and they're not. Where's the next win coming from? And they're struggling. They've played poorly in 2 games. They've won 1 away from home. They've drawn 1 against a really good side, and they've kept 2 clean sheets. I think it's that perspective that sometimes we can lose that perspective and forget. Actually, they're 3rd in the table. Borough play Middlesbrough. Borough play Middlesbrough. That'd be interesting. Coventry play Borough coming up very soon, so they're going to take points off each other. City have got 3 home games in a row. We just want to see them go and be a bit more controlling, dominate, and win, and not put a marker down, because I don't think it's about that, but go and win the next 2 games, and then if you draw against Derby, that's you say about 7 points from the next 3 games at home is really good. But yeah, I think they are defensively more solid, so that's important. That's going to give them a platform as the season gets a lot older to nick a lot more games like Blackburn 1-0.
You make a very fair point, but I also think we're judging them by different standards now because they've raised our expectations, and they've had on paper an excellent January transfer window, and we're thinking, right, come on then, kick on, let's see automatic promotion, because it's very much possible. So the expectation and our expectation of their standards, due to their efforts, is much higher than it was earlier in the season. And it's hard not to judge against that. But I absolutely take your point that, in the grand scheme of things, look where they are and look how well they're doing.
And
What is it? One defeat? Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. It's just you want to see them kick on because there's good players in there. There's talent in there. We Kumas on Saturday when he came on, not only the goal, but that pass with the outside of the foot from the left wing to set up a chance for Joseph that he scored. And there was a moment last night that was sheer class. But then he got into the he got sort of fell into the not finding anybody with his passes. You said earlier, Baz, it was they wanting to get rid of the ball like a hot potato. I don't think it's that. I just think the quality of their passing has dipped off. At Blackburn, they just couldn't keep possession. Last night it was the same. They had the ball and they kept giving it away. And I'm sure they'll sort it out. And it is a sort of little blip, but it's a dip below the level of expectation that we've got now. And that's credit to them for raising that expectation. Let me read a couple of messages, and Kathryn may have a view on that. I'm sure she will. These to the 1904 club. Nigel M says, it was always going to be harder to play Watford after sacking the manager. We look leggy and too many players off the game. We need to play more away games. Well, we've got news for you, Nigel. That's not happening for a few weeks. Phil Dawson says, thought Jukirovic's comments were honest as always and a fair reflection of how I saw it. Would have felt very differently if we'd lost, and so a point gained, I would say. Disappointed with Dowell's offering and thought we missed Crooks massively. Lee Walker says 2 points drop, but respect the point. Could come in handy at the end of the season. And CJ says, for me, we've got enough wingers. We needed another striker with us letting Destan go. Ollie doesn't look as sharp. Not sure he'll get through all the games in the run-in. Sometimes he needs a rest as well. Thought we looked better when Lunny came on. A few other decision-making was poor. And Phil Rutherford says, grateful in the end. We can't win them all, but we mustn't lose to teams like that either. Don't mention the ref. So we won't, Phil. I thought the ref was all right. I just maybe should have sent the young lad off. Well, should have sent the young lad off for Watford, but I'm not a referee basher by and large.
We'll get Prutton on that next time he's on, because obviously he works with the EFL referee, so we'll get his perspective. Before we finish, let's just have a quick kind of recap on the window. Obviously, the closed Monday night. They didn't make any signings on deadline day, but Joel and Darla did go to Sheffield Wednesday. David Akintola could still go. The Turkish window doesn't close until Friday. He's already turned down a couple of moves back to the Super League. And obviously Brandon Williams, as we said on Monday, his contract's been terminated. Kathryn, 5 signings in January, obviously working under the restrictions which have now been lifted for ahead of whatever they are in the summer, whether they're in the Championship or the Premier League. Incredible. How do you kind of square the circle of January?
I think it's a pretty good window, when you think about the restrictions that they had. I enjoyed the owner's Adjun's picture with them all at the training ground. It was almost like Simon Cowell stood with his new boy band a little bit. And you look at the quality of the players. Collier, we know kind of the quality he has, and then you think about the experience of someone like Paddy McNair. Just kind of good players to add to the group, and I think that's key. I know you talked earlier in January about not wanting to upset the sort of the harmony of the squad, and I think if you look at the characters of the players that they've all brought in, you settled in straight away, be really popular. I think they've got the balance just about right, and I'm sure they probably would have liked to have brought more in if they hadn't had the restrictions, but given what they were able to work with, I think you have to give the club credit for what they've been able to do. And I think they've brought in some great players, and it does feel like we've got more depth now, which I think has been something that we've all kind of worried about throughout the season. I think that that comment about needing another striker. I mean, Kyle Joseph can play through the middle, and when McBurney was injured, did quite a good job playing through the middle as well. If McBurney at some point needs a rest, I might be clutching at straws, but I'm sure Paddy McNair played a few games up front for Sunderland or Middlesbrough at some point and did quite a reasonable job. So worst comes to the worst, I'm sure we could throw him up there as well.
The problem, Burnsy
can play as a central striker.
Yeah, the problem. I get the striker comment, and I know there was one or two surprise that Destan was allowed to go, although he's injured, so he's not going to play for a month. It's who's coming in, because they can't pay a loan fee, they can't buy a player. So then you're relying on a free transfer like a João Pedro, or you're relying on a Premier League club giving you a younger player on loan, which, as we know, the loan issue is there. They've got six players now on loan, and they can only name 5 in the squad. And also, if McBurney's fit, he plays. So the striker, any striker coming in, knows, well, I'm going to be on the bench unless McBurney's injured, and then there's no guarantee they're going to play, because it might be Kyle Joseph, it might be Joe Gowhart, it might be Lewis Kumas playing through the middle. So it's to try in City's position to try and bring in a striker in January under with all those things I've just mentioned. I think that's nigh and impossible, really. And Destan was a situation where he's got this ongoing knee injury. That's obviously he arrived with. It kept him out for the first 3-4 games of the season. He played, I think, on New Year's Day. Then he's had this recurrence of his knee problem. He's not going to play much for the next month. So they took the decision, rather than keep him in the squad and not available, let's ship him out to Westerlo, where their season, because they have relegation playoffs and all that sort of stuff, so that goes on a bit longer. So he'll have a little bit more time to play, potentially. We'll use that place in our squad to bring in somebody like Kumas or Colley that can impact now.
Let me read a few more messages. This from another Nigel says, think we were lucky to get a point. Anyone saying it's 2 points drop didn't watch the same game. Their number 10 and 8 controlled the game for them, and we gave them too much time and respect. Dowell, non-existent for me, and I wasn't impressed. He's a good player, Nigel. He'll come good. Sorry, just my opinion. Thank you for sharing it, and we appreciate it. James Walker says, to the 1904 club, sometimes you don't play well because the opponent won't let you. We didn't lose the game, and another clean sheet. Rest up and move on. Peter says, a recurring theme, no composure on the ball, just kick, head the ball anywhere, and the opposition winning the loose ball. Also, Pandor's distribution is poor, which is keeping the pressure on the team. Jim Cam says, Crooks is the most influential player in the entire squad, essential to the way we play. Fall to pieces in midfield when he isn't there. Do not think we're stronger in midfield after the transfer window. Interesting point, Jim Can. And Grandad Albert says, every team goes through a part of the season when form takes a dip. City have been playing above their assumed levels. Are they in a false position? He answers his own question. No, they've deserved their luck and played well. But the new players need a few games to bed in, understand the plan, and just enjoy. And this last one from Dan Gibson to the 1904 club. Tar for that, Dan. Tar for taking the time. I'm convinced they probably would have beaten us in the fixture at the start of January. I'll take a point against a team who were miles better than us on the night. Thought Dowell, Hadzimatovic were less than impressive. Kumas had an absolute shocker, says Dan Gibson. He had one magical moment. But yeah, as I said earlier, he got into the sloppy passing routine that a fair few of them have been doing in the last couple of games. Kathryn?
Put a great cross in, didn't he? I can't remember who was offside in the end, and they were offside. But
Miller.
It was brief. That was an example of what he can do. But I mean, it was. I thought it was difficult for anyone coming off the bench last night. I think Kyle Joseph found it difficult as well, because we just couldn't keep the ball. And when the team is sort of in that rhythm, it's quite difficult sometimes to come on as a sub and change it if that's what's going on. I think to lay off Kumas a little bit. I think he'll get up to speed soon, I'm sure.
And I come back, Kathryn. I come back to the point that, yeah, absolutely. I come back to the point that was it? Who was the last comment from, Burnsy?
Hold on a minute. Was it Cliff, from Jeff? Dan Dan Gibson.
Yeah, I think he's right. Every team goes through a bad spell in the league. Coventry are going through one right now. Middlesbrough have been through one. Ipswich have had obviously a really poor start. You would say that Ipswich losing 1-0 at home to Preston was a really poor result. Nobody saw that coming. They salvaged a point. But you just said before the game that was a home banker, given Preston's form and Ipswich, particularly at Portman Road. So every team has iffy spells, and City are going through an iffy spell. But I come back to it. They've got 4 points from 2 games against a team that are fighting for their lives at the bottom of the table, and a team that on their day in this league can beat anybody if they turn up. And let's not forget, 4 games ago, before last night, were above us in the table, albeit on goal difference, but we're above us in the table. And now we're miles away. So that we've not lost any points to our rivals. They've not the gap. Watford haven't closed the gap to us or anything like that. And they've never lost more than 2 games in a row this season. That was miles back at the beginning. So I think we just need to be cautious not to get too. We can raise concerns and points, and the manager himself, that's his job. If they lose on Saturday and then they lose to Chelsea in the FA Cup, and then they lose or don't beat QPR, then you can go, well, are we in a bit of a blip? Are they? Is this their spell? And they will have it. I think they will lose games in the next 16. They are going to lose a couple of games, but consistently they are at the top of the form charts. Over the last 10 games, they've got the most points in the league. Nobody in the last 10 games has got more points than Hull City. 1 defeat in 11, I think it is. So, let's be, be mindful that they're not, they've taken 4 points from 2 games and kept 2 clean sheets.
With Crooks, I think it was a month, wasn't it? Originally, he was going to be out for a month with the hamstring issue. I can't remember which was it. Swansea was on the bench and then didn't come on. I feel like we should have put him on to get his yellow card and get his 2-game suspension during, because that's my worry, is that when he comes back, he'll immediately get a yellow card and then he'll be gone for another 2 games.
That's what Kovac said.
Put him on now to just sort of like trip somebody up in the 90th minute or something and just take his yellows so he doesn't have to then miss an extra 2 games when he does come back.
I'll put that to, well, it's Dean Holden and Ivor Pandor tomorrow. But Jukovic, when Sergei's not doing the press conference, he always brings the coffees as well. So when he brings the coffees in the morning, I'll mention it. I'll say, look, you need to chuck Crooksy on for the last couple of minutes. Get his yellow card, and make sure it's his left foot, not his bad leg that trips somebody up, and make his 2-game ban. Yeah,
make sure it's definitely a yellow. Not that's a red. Don't go overboard. Just a little trip yellow card.
Well, just one of the daft, lanky things that he sometimes does. It's a great suggestion. That is a brilliant suggestion. I love that. I'll put that to the gaffer tomorrow. Burnsy, before we go on.
Yeah, sure. I had a couple more messages because I'd like to get through as many as I can, and I think we'll have done them all to the 1904 club. Tom Butler, the Bransholme Tiger. Nice to hear from you, Tom. Hope you're well. Their number 10 and 8 ran the middle of the pitch. 1 or 2 players looked out of sorts, but we move on to Saturday and hopefully we get a bit more from the boys. Tiger Door, she says, not sure we had the right starting 11. I had no quibbles with the team. I could see exactly why he selected the way he did, Door. No pace, no press, and second to most balls. Passing wasn't great, and we seem to have stopped getting stuck in. Surely someone has noticed when we start on the front foot, the crowd get behind the lads. Crooks is a big miss for me, says Tiger Door. Yeah, the atmosphere was a bit flat. It's a bit chicken and egg sometimes. I think sometimes the fans have got to lift the team, haven't they? Get them going, and but it didn't quite happen last night. But you're right, Baz. It's a point, and they're on this really good run, and they're bang in contention. But I do think they've set the standards now, so we expect better of them. And,
absolutely.
That's part of the thing. And I don't think the pressure has come yet. I agree with what Kathryn said. It will come at some point. There will be a big pressure game comes. And
it will probably be the Coventry game, because if the trajectory carries on as it is, you could theoretically be 4 or 5 points behind Coventry, potentially closer when that game comes around. And you could have a situation where, a bit like the Ipswich game and the Leicester game under Liam Rosenior, you could have that situation where you need to win to go above them or to go level on points, and that is the big pressure game because you're at home. The TV cameras will be there. On that subject, by the way, quite a few people asking about TV games. We are expecting them at some point imminently for March. What we're on Wednesday today, it wouldn't surprise me if we got them before the end of the week, or certainly early part of next week. They're supposed to have released them from Sunday, so the next tranche of games, I would be amazed if City weren't picked 2 or 3 times, and it wouldn't surprise me. If that Coventry game, it has to be on telly, doesn't it? Sheffield United away is always on telly, so that probably gets picked. I'm surprised the Derby game hasn't been moved yet to 12:30 or whatever. So I know the QPR game's 12:30 anyway, but the Derby game is massive, so it wouldn't. I don't know if it's possible.
45, I think, according
to.
Again?
Oh, it's a Tuesday night. Of course it is. Sorry, it's a Tuesday night, so it will be on.
12 on a Tuesday would be impressive.
Sorry, I've lost all track of where I am. Yeah, you're right. The Derby game is the Tuesday night, so that will be on. That is obviously on telly. I wonder if they might bump that to the main game rather than just be on the red button.
Millwall at home in March as well.
100%. Yeah, 100. They've got to be, haven't they? They would have to be on telly. You would think. Charlton away on the FA Cup semi-final weekend in April, London Marathon weekend, because the hotel prices are astonishing. So I'm taking my tent and pitching up on Greenwich Park.
You can stay in my garden if you want, Baz, but
can I camp out in your garden? Oh, amazing! I'll do that. We'll have a midnight feast, little bar.
I'm not sure my 2-man tent league would be impressed, but Charlton game clashes with Women's Champions League semi-finals as well, so that's going to be problematic for me.
Oh dear, Burnsy, it is a 2-man, so you can snuggle up, yeah.
Cheers.
You've got in above Mike White as well, so that's I'm pleased about that. Before we go, quick mention: Brian Horton, friend of the show, 77 today, so happy birthday to the legendary Brian Horton. Right, that's it from this episode of the 1904 Club. Looking back on an unbeaten 2 games for Hull City and Bristol City to come at the MKM on Saturday. Huge game. Well, they all are now, aren't they? 16 games to go, in City in the thick of, can we say it, the automatic promotion race. Incredible. Kathryn, always a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and nice to have Burnsy's new wife. I only had a couple of hiccups today, so get the discount code in, Burnsy10.
He'll be flogging cannabis gummies before we know it. Burnsy 10 again in them. Burnsy, on delay, always a pleasure.
Very funny. I've enjoyed it.
Always. Thanks for your comments as always. We do appreciate them. Shameless plug before we do go. We did an interview with Adjun Ilishela on transfer deadline day in the evening. It's on the podcast. Wherever you get your podcast from, you can listen to that half an hour of Adjun talking about the transfer window, the season so far, the season to come, Chelsea in the FA Cup, reunion with Liam Rosenior, what he's learned over 4 years, about his mistakes, what he's got right, what he's got wrong. Obviously, the transfer restrictions and God knows what else. So thanks to Adjun for giving up half an hour of his time on deadline night. And there's also a cheeky little apology at the end for making no signings on deadline day, tongue in cheek, of course. So do give that a listen if you can. So that's it from this episode. Thanks, everybody. And we'll be back again soon. Up the Tigers.